Indie and RPGs. Two terms that can be used to describe almost anything in the modern games industry. You might even argue that annualised sports games were indie RPGs because of all those stat screens, player upgrades, and well, does PES not having the Premier League team licence make it indie? Yeah, that's well Pete Doherty that. But you're not here for a list of our favourite almost anything in the games industry, are you? The indie landscape's scary broad, and sometimes it pays to zero in on a particular genre. You want to hear about the role-playing games that throw caution to the wind and mix tradition with taboo, old school tropes with new ideas, epic quests you can really lose yourself in. So here are some of those, if you please. These are the RPGs that stole our hearts and free time. We're not here to say that they're the best, just that we'll always keep a slot free in our inventories by way of thanks for the joy they bring us. In a world where games were required by law to go by plainly descriptive titles, Undertale would be called surprising pixely adventure where you don't have to hurt anyone and the bosses look like 90s music videos. It's to everyone's benefit that such a law doesn't exist. While some RPGs are happy to exist in the same old high fantasy universe full of lovely trees and fearsome kobolds, whatever a kobold actually is, Undertale goes for something different. Really different. Like you fell asleep in front of your NES after a solid day eating cheese different. From meta moments like bosses chewing up your save games to frankly bizarre dialogue throughout, it's one to load up when you're sick of finding yourself in another Lord of the Rings analogue. There doesn't always have to be a medieval peasant asking you to retrieve his brother's sword from a haunted crypt, and you're not always a universe-saving god king. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you're just a nobody sleeping on a sofa, trying to get over your poor life choices and scraping enough cash together to eat today. This is the genius of Always Sometimes Monsters, the way it tells a painfully real and relatable story through the framework of a cutesy top-down RPG that you're so used to seeing comfortable fantasies within. It can be heavy going at times, but it's also capable of drawing out a belly laugh. What was it really like in medieval times? What did people do all day, and how did they get by without Wi-Fi or fidget spinners? And did it smell as bad as you'd imagine a world that's pre-indoor plumbing and really any concept of sanitation at all to smell? Well, Kingdom Come Deliverance can't answer all of those questions, but its devotion to historical accuracy does bring you as close to early 15th century Bohemia as you're ever likely to get. A pretty decent chunk of land from the modern day Czech Republic has been summoned from the mists of time and revitalised in this game, down to minor geographical details. So when you journey from a small hamlet of peasant farmers to the monastery, you know that hundreds of years ago, real people made the same journey, and it probably took them just as long. Assuming they were able to sprint almost indefinitely while carrying several weapons, of course. Oh, and random items of clothing, and that entire wheel of cheese. And there's something wonderful about that. Alright! We're moving on to one from the Versus Evil fold now, but you don't need us to tell you how great Pillars 2 is. We just happen to love it. Obsidian really know their way around an isometric AD&D RPG. The veterans of the studio sculpted the late 90s and early noughties classics that form the bedrock of the genre, and it shows here in Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Look at that combat system simulating untold dice rolls, and those delicious lines of dialogue tricking you into doing actual reading without realising it. And while the seafaring naval combat and ship management stuff is a decidedly new addition to the Infinity Engine RPG formula, it's married so well to the story of hopping around tropical islands, chasing a marauding god, that you'll be appointing new head cooks and keel-hauling people before you know it. Banner Saga 3 is another title Versus Evil publishes, and naturally is also another title Versus Evil absolutely loves. And what's not to love? It's Vikings versus the End of the World. How's that for an attention-grabbing, bum-on-gaming chair pitch? Or, if that wasn't enough to meet your implausibly high standards for video game premises, Vikings versus a race of ancient and unknowable human exterminators against a backdrop of perpetual twilight as humanity teeters on the edge of apocalypse, rendered in sumptuous 2D. There, did that meet your highness's demands? A game of agonising tactical quandaries and deeply grown-up narratives, Banner Saga 3 is catnip for George Martin buffs and graphic designers alike. Oh, Divinity Original Sin 2. How can we begin to explain you? You're astoundingly difficult. You don't seem to care whether the player knows what they're supposed to do next, and at times you even seem to be actively trying to wind us up. But we always come back to you, don't we? You smug, brilliant turn-based RPG. We love that you can play the whole sprawling caper, and we do mean caper, in co-op, and that when your relationship with your co-op buddy inevitably sours, it actively empowers you to act like the heinous troll you so desire to be. You can get into voiced arguments, you can sabotage their quests, and by can we obviously mean will. In that way, Divinity 2 is completely unique and ready to ruin friendships at the drop of a hat. If farming was this enjoyable in real life, you wouldn't be able to move for crop fields and combine harvesters. Everybody would be at it. What a stress-free way to earn a living, harvesting your perfectly spaced vegetables without a second thought for cold snaps killing your entire harvest, or hard bargaining supermarkets driving your profit margins down. Perhaps that's the real joy of Stardew Valley. Things can never go too far wrong. It's so open-ended that you're allowed to happily saunter about befriending the local villagers and maybe even join one of them in holy matrimony, without having to constantly fret about losing your livelihood thanks to a plague of slugs or EU trade tariffs. And frankly, there's no better barometer for RPG quality than that. And now for a total departure from traditional role-playing that makes Stardew Valley look like Baldur's Gate. Sunless Sea is barely discernible as an RPG, such as its obsession with steampunk naval exploration, Lovecraftian atmosphere, and looking in this journal where basically the entire game takes place. But look past the surface differences to the kind of Lord of the Ringsian landscapes you think of when someone says RPG, and you'll find a whole bushel of upgradable bits and bobbins, character sheets, quest logs, and the kind of slow-burning, atmospheric written storytelling that the genre built its name on. Wait, did we just level up? Huzzah! Now we've been through all our favourite indie RPGs in the kingdom, let's divvy up the loot. You take the subscribe button and the thumbs up, we'll take the gratification. Deal? We'll catch you next time.